Okay guys, hey, welcome back to another video about obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, my name is Brian, also known as OCD Mindful. This is Jax. He likes hanging out while I make videos now. And hey, today's topic is going to be Hocd, Q&A. I have received a ton of questions since I posted a video about Hocd probably about a month ago. And I'm starting to think, there are some statistics on this that you can find, but I'm starting to think that Hocd has got to be the leading cause, the leading subset of pure OCD. Okay, come here, stinkers. Raw. Just based on how many views my last video got, and almost every email or question I get is specifically about Hocd. So today I'm going to just answer some of the questions that I got over the last month or so that I think are good questions that I can provide some insight for, and I encourage you to actually put these into practice as opposed to just watching videos and reading articles. I was thinking of another way to nail this point home, and I'll say it like this. You're better off reading one page. If there was one page written in a book about exactly what the steps are to overcome OCD, even if it lacked a bunch of nuance and detail and specifics, you're better off reading that one page and actually just doing it, jumping into treatment and trusting what you read on that one page, than you are not jumping into treatment and watching 1,000 videos and reading 1,000 articles and checking forums and trying to attain all this information with the hope that you're going to learn something that's going to get rid of your OCD. I'm sorry, it does not work that way. Seriously, it doesn't work that way. The only way you get better is by doing cognitive behavioral therapy in the form of exposure and response prevention. You can get some added benefits through practice of mindfulness. And that is why I call my channel OCD Mindful, and that is why I'm such a big proponent of mindfulness myself. Anyway, jumping into the questions. Okay, question number one. Do you realize that you're straight after doing treatment? So look, I'm going to answer all these questions in a way as honest as I can without providing reassurance. Okay, if you were to ask me today, am I straight? If it was just a stranger on the street, I would say yes. If it was someone that came around and said, we're doing a follow-up study of everybody who went through OCD treatment, are you straight? I would answer that question probably the same way I would answer it during treatment, is it's my best guess. I still don't pretend that I have certainty on it, but I also feel like I don't need certainty on it. The same way you don't feel like you need certainty on non-OCD issues, right? I can never have certainty, say, that my parents haven't been killed today and I don't know about it yet, right? That's a common form of OCD, is concerns about the safety of others. So the truth is, I can't have certainty on that fact, but that's not an OCD problem of mine. And if it's not an OCD problem of yours, you don't demand certainty on a question that isn't OCD related. It just doesn't exist that way. Okay, number two, what are some of the rituals that I did for my Hocd? Okay, this is gonna get pretty heavy, but what I found with my Hocd was that I couldn't ease or tiptoe or pussyfoot around it. I had to jump in and do as extreme of exposures as I could without just fully going out and having sex with men. Okay, so for me, the rituals that didn't work were things like looking at a picture of a handsome man and grading him from 1 to 10. That might work for you. If it does, that's fine. For me, and there's a lot of other people like me that I've worked with now, we have another measure on board, a meter on board that gauges whether we're buying this OCD story or not. And that's our arousal level, right? So it might be considered an exposure to go look at gay porn, to watch gay porn, to go watch an orgy of a bunch of guys having sex with each other. But the problem is almost all of us are doing something else. We're watching the gay porn, but we're tuned into what's happening down here. And if we're noticing that we're not getting aroused at all, or we're saying things, well, let me just stick with that. If we notice we're not getting aroused at all, it actually ends up, for a lot of people, being a ritual. You end up feeling better about it. You go, wow, I did the exposure that my therapist told me to do, and I feel a lot better because I didn't get aroused by it. That's missing the point completely. Okay, so what I had to finally do, and look, I did that for a long time. It was this thing that I've talked about so many times where I knew I was cheating myself. So, if you set out to do an exposure and you find that your anxiety actually goes down, odds are you just did a ritual, okay? And there's a bunch of reasons why it can work out that way. So what I found that I had to start doing was I would get aroused to straight porn, one guy, one girl, and then I'd switch over and watch gay porn, and I would masturbate to the gay porn once I was already aroused. This way it eliminated any reassurance or any ability to say, well, it was really the girl that I was aroused to, because I just didn't know. That was the point of the exposure, was to get yourself to a point that you truly don't know. And that thought really scares the shit out of people. And it scared the shit out of me. I mean, as far as exposures go, that was an extreme exposure. And I would finish to it. I would ejaculate to it. And seriously, it felt like a piece of my soul was leaving my body every time I did it. My anxiety obviously would skyrocket. And as I've mentioned before, I started to learn how to sit in meditation directly after doing an exposure. And not for the purpose of making the anxiety go away, but actually for the purpose of fully experiencing it. It was almost like a double exposure, because I wouldn't distract myself from the way I was feeling. I would fully embrace it. And all the while reminding myself, wow, that seems like pretty concrete evidence that you were able to finish to a gay porn movie that you, at the very least, have some bisexual tendencies, right? It has to be. So I had to leave that as a big old fat question mark. Couldn't answer the question. Other ones that worked for me, other exposures that worked for me, I live in Philadelphia. It's very easy for me to walk over to gay bars. So I would sit at gay bars and have conversations with guys. Never took it further than that. Felt as though I didn't have to. And I would advise against, going to the lengths of actually starting to date men or have sex with men just to do a ritual. One, it's not fair to the other guy who probably doesn't know what you're doing. Two, you can get better without going to those lengths. Another one that worked for me was reading coming out stories about guys who actually thought they were straight up until their later years in life, and then realized they were gay, right? Like it was just dormant, because that hit home. That was very real, right? Oh, this happened to me in my early 20s, but yeah, most people will tell you they knew they were gay from the time they were kids. But you read a story about someone who says, I was in my 30s, married to a woman, I had 2 kids, and all of a sudden I learned this thing about me that I actually didn't know. That will flare up your anxiety. That flared mine up, right? I mean, that story seemed believable for what I was going through, and So there was that. There was also, there's websites where you can watch video cams. So I would go to those lengths where I would actually watch video cams, and, you know, flirt with guys and talk to them, and you know what people are doing on the internet. So that one was probably the most extreme. That's as extreme as I went. And yeah, I mean, these were really hard things to do. These were gnarly exposures. But some other common ones, if you don't want to start there, I mean, really that's extreme, are you know, read those coming out stories of people who thought they were straight. You can do the thing where you walk around the street and just look at attractive guys and grade them from 1 to 10, look at their ass and say, you know, wow, I think maybe I really am into that. Okay, moving on. Okay, have any clients or any people that I know of, I should say, ever realized that they were gay going through treatment? Okay, you know who you are, who's asking this question over and over again. I feel for this person. I'm trying my best to get through to them because they've asked this question an obsessive 75 to 80 times. What threw them was a trigger that I threw out on my last HOCD video about it can be possible that you can have OCD and your OCD fear can also be true. So both things can exist at the same time. Now, I mean, here's a perfect example of that. There's a video of John Grayson talking about a client that he finally got to accept to do treatment. And hers was, as I mentioned earlier in this video, a concern about the safety of loved ones. I think his story was primarily her father. And she would do rituals of, you know, magic stuff, like making sure she avoided stepping on cracks in the sidewalk, or, you know, turning things 3 times. Rituals of magic that would prevent her loved ones from ever getting sick or dying. And as it happened, within, I think, a couple weeks, I forget the details on this video, of accepting treatment, her father actually died. Okay? So there's a perfect example of, yeah, the bad thing, the thing you fear, doesn't have, like, you know, there are certain people who have OCDs where their fears are eventually going to be inevitable. Fears about your own death, things like that. So I'm not going to answer that question because I don't think it's answerable. There isn't some large-scale study that exists of everybody who's gone through HOCD treatment and someone went around to their house and said, okay, we need to know now, are you gay or are you straight? Did you come out? It just doesn't exist. And like I said earlier, if you asked anyone who honestly did the treatment, their answer would still be, I just live in a world with uncertainty. I can't tell you for certain whether I am or whether I'm not. Now, I will say this, and if this triggers you, use it as an exposure. Just because it's happening in this video and you didn't seek this out doesn't mean it's not a good exposure. In fact, those are the best exposures, the ones that happen accidentally when you're not actually looking for them. I spoke directly with someone who reached out to me for a different type of OCD. I believe this person was suffering from ROCD, and he had admitted that in his younger years, he had dealt with HOCD. And he had also admitted that at this point in his life, he is an openly gay man. Okay? So, you know, the point I try to make here is to fall into this trap of saying it can't be real because it's OCD is preventing you from taking the first step. And guys, I'll say this a million times. The treatment here is truly to live in a world where you don't know and to be okay with that. So all the people out there who say, okay, I'll do treatment because I know it's not real, you're already not doing treatment. When you make those little points in your head, you're not doing treatment. When you ask me over and over again, is it possible that you could be gay and still have OCD? Yeah, it's possible. You need to accept that that's a possibility, and you need to actually live in a world where you don't get to know. I know how hard that is. I know how bad that sucks. Okay. Why does it feel so real? All right, well, this is a question that can be answered about any type of OCD. And I don't know if I've ever come across a very convincing answer. So my answer to this is it feels so real because if it didn't feel real, it probably wouldn't be OCD. You probably wouldn't be worried about it at all. Right? If you thought up your OCD fear and it didn't seem like a genuine threat or a genuine crisis in your life, you wouldn't be obsessing about it. So it is very weird that things that you fear can masquerade as desire or as truths about you. But that's my answer to that. It feels real because if it didn't, it wouldn't be bothering you. So, okay, let's see. What did I do to stop ritualizing? Well, the main thing I did was remind myself every time that I either did an intentional exposure or an accidental exposure, or I just spiked out of nowhere, which will happen. You don't need to have a trigger. It can just happen. I had a bunch of stuff written down on index cards for why I shouldn't ritualize. It was important for me to read those every time this happened for probably a matter of months. But they were honest and to the point comments and thoughts and ideas about why not to ritualize. And the main one was, you have ritualized how many thousands of times? You have seemingly gotten an answer to this problem how many thousands of times? And it doesn't work. Okay, so it is literally pointless to keep ritualizing. Not only is it pointless, it's making your condition worse. Okay, so a straightforward, reasonable, logical answer like that is where you can apply logic to OCD. Apply logic to you sticking to the treatment and not ritualizing. Other things I would do was, I had little comments written down about how this was a good thing. I've mentioned this in other videos. I had to try to convince myself that for the purposes of getting better, I had to amplify my anxiety and I had to just try to burn this thing out. It's there's no other way to turn it off than to burn it out. So there's a bunch of other little tidbits and things that I did. I think the mindfulness was a huge help, and learning all of these bits of ancient wisdom from Buddhist philosophy and from more current authors about mindfulness that I was reading, from coaches that I was seeing, just about being able to accept, being able to open up, to be patient, to be non-judgment, to practice beginner's mind and non-striving. These are all meditation techniques that definitely helped get me over the hump. All right, you guys, if anything I said in that video triggered you, again, use it. Do not ritualize. Do not go read right now about how it's impossible to actually be gay if you have HOCD. Don't go look up other people's stories about overcoming OCD. Don't go read a bunch of articles. Apply this stuff. Seriously, apply this stuff. I want you to get better. I know how much better I got by doing these things. And I've now had so many people that are making tremendous strides by doing it. But you have to take that first step. You have to bite the bullet and do the hard thing and agree to live in a world where you don't know the answer to this question. And you have to give up the hope that just by going through this treatment, you're going to get the answer, because that's a step in the wrong direction. You have to recognize the futility of trying to solve this question. And you have to learn to be happy and accepting of just not knowing. Right? Imagine right now if you had some injury to your brain where you truly were never going to know your sexual orientation again. Take that approach and just say, hey, look, for now, this is a thing that I'm giving up trying to figure it out. Okay, that doesn't mean that you're not going to have instincts anymore in life. It doesn't mean that you can't engage in certain behaviors. But it does mean you have to give up trying to peg this thing down with certainty all day long, ruminating and ritualizing and thinking about your past and what this means for your. Just look at it as, hey, this is a piece of me that I'm deciding to let go right now. All right, do me a favor, guys. Hit subscribe. I'm putting a ton of content out now. Put a comment on here. Let me know what you think. If you have questions, you can email me at ocdmindful@gmail.com. And also let me know if you're interested in me putting a course together. I really have so much content that I've put together recently that I would like to put in an online course where you don't end up spending thousands upon thousands of dollars and you get seriously a whole lot of information. All right, y'all, take care.